97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco. Powered by InsideTheBirds.com.
He's in! Touchdown!
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Yes, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Of course, Football at 4 being brought to you by PleasureSugarHouse.com. Andrew DiCecco joins the show on Tuesdays during the week. He's back from his little vacation. He's joining us here to talk a lot about the Eagles and the NFL here on 97.3 ESPN. Andrew, how you doing today?
Josh, I'm doing great, man. How about yourself?
Good to have you back. We're doing all right. And we got to start with the bigger news because this whole situation with college football, and you're a guy who covers a lot of college football, we have a situation here where the Big Ten's talking about pushing off until the spring. And whether there's football in the spring or not, we don't really know because this whole situation is completely fluid. But as somebody who is involved in the draft world and knows what goes into the evaluation of draft picks, how crazily negatively impactful is this for teams who rely on these games ahead of the draft, that you're going to have an entire fall season with the majority of the football world not playing at the amateur level?
Yeah, well, it really is a shame it's come to this. But, you know, what you kind of see that culminated is a lack of a governing body in college football, coupled with, you know, the nation's lack of, you know, getting a grasp on COVID-19. So all that combined is, you know, kind of transpired in lack of college football. You're not going to see, you know, a lot of the prominent players in the nation. They're going to have that opportunity, like you said, to perform this year. While you'll see guys like, you know, like Fields from Ohio State and a number of other players that are, you know, they're safe, they're blue chip guys. There's a number of players that, you know, had top 50 potential that all of a sudden, you know, they could have used a little bit more tape, and now all of a sudden they're kind of in limbo like so many players are. So I think when, you know, like you said, look, they plan on moving things to the spring, but this virus isn't going anywhere. You know, for anyone to think that you turn the calendar to January 1st and everything kind of just goes away, I mean, there may be a vaccine by then, but there's still so many things that we're learning with this virus. And obviously the plan is to move it to things in the spring. But, you know, what do you do if you're a senior? Do you do the spring league? Do you bet on yourself and enter the draft? There's a lot of things. I mean, if you're a younger player, you obviously have the option to redshirt, but it's kind of a fluid situation, like you said.
Do you sense that the NFL teams might trade more and be willing to trade more of their draft picks just because of the uncertainty of things? I know when the Seahawks made the trade for Adams, some of the speculation was, look, you don't know if there's going to be college football, so maybe you give up a heavier package because you just don't know what you're going to be getting when it comes to these picks.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I think you will see some teams be a little bit more willing to part with some of those top picks, because this season, more than ever, teams are really going to have to be relying heavily on their scouting departments to really uncover a lot of these gems, because, like I said, some of these guys really needed this season to cement their draft status, and they're not going to have that. But there's going to be a lot of talent in this draft, so you really need to see what your scouting department can do, and they're going to be, you know, put to the test here. But to answer your question, yeah, I do think that teams will be more willing to part with it just because of the uncertainty.
What about also the fact, we talked about this the last time, we got a question on the text board about the possibility of teams maybe not willing to draft the quarterback and may try to trade for other teams' quarterbacks. And, you know, obviously some people might think of Jalen Hurts with the Eagles, but a name that I thought of is Josh Rosen, because just a few years ago, that guy was a huge prospect. And then he went to an abomination of a Cardinals team, went to another mess with Miami. So could teams look at the draft and say, I don't really have tape on the quarterbacks, I could go out off and trade for another team's discarded young quarterback?
Well, I think that all depends on where teams are sitting. You know, if you're a couple players away from making a postseason push, I think you may be more willing to target a guy like a Josh Rosen or something like that. But if you're a team that's kind of in rebuild mode and you're looking for that, to identify that quarterback of the future, you're going to be more willing to, you know, gamble on your draft, on your scouting department and find that quarterback that you can kind of work with and develop, you know, as you're 20, 21, 22 years old. But, I do think it depends a lot where you're at as a franchise.
I'm going to give you a specific franchise because this is the franchise that I also thought of when this conversation came up. The Chicago Bears are in a very unenviable situation. What if Nick Foles and Mitch Trubisky both don't work out? So that means the guy you traded for didn't work out. It's supposed to fit the head coach's system. The guy you traded up in the draft didn't work out. So now you're left between a real rock and a hard place.
Yeah, that's a team. That's a great example. I kind of liken that also to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They signed, they went after Tom Brady and they got him. And, they have a very underrated defense and a lot of pieces on offense to really make a run. Looking at the Chicago Bears, their defense has always been very stout. But you look at the offensive side of the ball, and they had, they had Jordan Howard and they had Tariq Cohen. You had a pretty good backfield. Now you have David Montgomery, obviously, but their offensive line has always been questionable, and their quarterback play has been very sporadic, at best. Mr. Trubisky has proven, he's been given a lot of opportunities, and he's proven he's not going to likely be the guy to carry that team forward. And Nick Foles, being as streaky as he is, you saw what he did. Obviously, he'll be forever remembered for what he did here in Philadelphia. But, he's been a streaky quarterback throughout his career. I think that's a team that, when you look at what they have on offense, Allen Robinson, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated wide receivers in football. They have some pieces there. That's a team that should be targeting a player in the mold of a Josh Rosen. I agree.
Andrew DiCecco joining us here on the Boardwalk on the Hotline on 97.3 ESPN Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast here on 97.3 ESPN every day for football at 4. Andrew, let's flip it over to the Eagles. You mentioned the defense. The weird news that came down over the weekend with Jatavis Brown just suddenly out of the blue retiring. He's not opting out of the season like everyone else. He's retiring from football altogether. So you're talking about a guy who a lot of people thought was going to be part of this linebacker core. So what is your perspective on the state of the Eagles linebackers right now?
Well, that was one of the positions they couldn't afford to get any thinner, and they managed to do so. Jatavis Brown was one of I call them glue guys, one of the veterans that, he's performed in the league for a while, and he has played at a high level. This was kind of going to be, a redemption type of year for him, maybe not being, maybe coming on as that third linebacker. But, he started a lot of games in the league, in the NFL, and, I believe this is, over 4 seasons, and he was a guy that they really needed when you look at the inexperience of the linebacking core. I believe of the 7 players that are there's only 35 starts combined from them. I think Eagles would be remiss if they didn't add a veteran linebacker to the mix here. Now, the problem is there's not a whole lot of options out there that are going to be, significantly better than what you have, especially at this stage of the offseason. There's a guy named Jalen Reeves-Maybin from the Detroit Lions that may be available as far, he's more of a special teams guy, 25 years old, kind of that hybrid safety linebacker mold, like a Kamu Grugier-Hill or a Duke Riley. Mark Barron's a player that I really like. He was cut from the Steelers, in a cap move. He was due, I believe, $5 million, but he's 31 years old. He's still that hybrid type of linebacker. He's not as proficient in coverage, but he does give you that physical, that veteran presence and that physical downhill thumper that I think the team needs. And it's really dire straits out there. I mean, I don't really know what other. I mean, Paul Warlow's still out there, and as I understand, he's healthy now. But as you can see, the options are they're not very tempting.
I want to relate this linebacker core to the Phillies bullpen for a second. Do you think that the linebacking core is so bad that it can actually ruin games for the team? Like, the Phillies offense can score a bunch of runs, but here comes the bullpen, and before you know it, the game's all over and they lose. Do you think the linebacker core is that bad right now that they can actually lose them football games?
I think over the course of Jim Schwartz's Eagles tenure, they really haven't had, outside of the Nigel Bradham when he was playing at high level and Jordan Hicks, he hasn't really had a dominant linebacker, and he's kind of been able to mitigate some of their liabilities and kind of cover up for some of those deficiencies that he has at that second level, by using a lot of defensive backs and being creative in how he deploys a lot of his players. I don't know that they can necessarily lose them games, but there will be certain matchups there where, you face some of those run heavy teams. The Eagles don't really have, outside of TJ Edwards, a lot of these, bigger physical linebackers that can fill these gaps and and defend the run, like the Jeremiah Trotters and Nigel Bradhams that they had in years past. So I think in coverage, they're kind of, the way that it's built is they have a lot of guys that are pretty good in coverage. You have, Duke Riley, who's incredibly fast. You have Nate Gary, who that's really his specialty. You have guys that are good in coverage and can match up with some of these hybrid tight ends and move around a little bit. But I think they're going to run into some problems when it comes to stopping some teams against the run, like the Giants with Saquon Barkley.
I know Jeff Mosher was on yesterday, and he was very emphatic that he believed the Eagles were going to make a move for a linebacker. So what do you think? What kind of linebacker do you think makes the most sense, considering the fact that also you brought in Darius Slay, so you're obviously doing something a little bit different with the defense with having a cover corner. You have these new coaches that you brought in who are going to be a little bit different in how they're going to work under Jim Schwartz with their ideas as well. So what kind of linebacker do you think makes the most sense to be brought in?
Well, when you look at the past history of what the Eagles have done, they haven't invested a lot of money in the linebacker position. That's not a high priority for their, they don't prioritize that on defense. So I think when you look at what they could potentially add, it's probably going to be along the lines of a low-level starter. And they need a veteran, so it's going to be a veteran. You kind of assess depth charts around the league and some veterans that may be on the outside looking in, whether it's an influx of young talent that was added through the draft or whatever, and they really don't have a spot for them. I think you could see the Eagles target somebody like that, but it's likely not going to be another young linebacker because they have a number of them that still need a lot of time and development to play. So I think Jatavis Brown was that veteran that they were going to be counting on, and I think that makes the most logical sense to me.
Keeping it with the defensive side of the football, they did add Vinny Curry to the defensive line. Your thoughts?
Well, I've always been a proponent of letting your young players play. Now, Vinny Curry, does he make your team substantially older? He makes them a little bit older, and you're gonna take away some snaps from a guy like a Josh Sweat or even a Sharif Miller, possibly a Joe Osman. But Vinny Curry was playing at a very high level last year. It was one of his best. I believe it was one of his best seasons since 2014, if I'm not mistaken. He was very effective as a pass rusher. He can play inside and he can play outside. They really needed a veteran. I mean, I guess they could use a veteran there, but you really haven't had that long of a look at Josh Sweater or some of your younger linemen over the offseason. So I think it may have been a little bit premature, but he's a good, fallback plan, a good security blanket to have a guy that's still playing at a high level that wants to be there, that is versatile and can play, multiple positions on the defensive line.
Now, you mentioned about having Vinny Curry that I might, not allow someone else to come in, but what about the fact that it's been suggested, we had people on the show last week who were saying, hey, listen, one of the issues in the NFL will be if you don't have veteran players out there, they might not know what the other side is doing. So in a building with no fans, you're going to be able to hear all the play calls from the offense. So isn't it important to have maybe more veterans out there who know what might be coming, like a Vinny Curry, than a guy like a Gerald Avery or a Josh Sweat who may not know what Z22Y banana X75 back end really means?
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. But, at some point you do need to let these young players play. And, Josh Sweat's been around for a few seasons now. The Eagles traded a fourth-round pick to get Jannard Avery. At some point you have to kind of, take the training wheels off these guys and really let them be the player that you drafted or acquired them to be. And so I thought it may have been a little bit premature adding Vinny Curry. It's certainly not going to hurt. It can only help. But, the Eagles drafted these guys and had these guys in position all season, to kind of assume a more prominent role in the rotation. And I thought that, they kind of deserved that until they proved that they couldn't handle it.
Other Eagles news today, Andrew DiCecco joining us on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at DiCecco NFL. Andrew, Lane Johnson called off the COVID list, and the last time we saw him, he was posting pictures on social media of him looking like basically he should be competing for one of those, bodybuilder kind of competitions. But, Lane Johnson is a very interesting guy and a very important guy to this team because when you think about, if a guy has to go down on the IL or go on the COVID list, you don't want it to be a guy like Lane Johnson because of the fact that you have an offensive line that has not one but two guys who are fairly new at their positions. Jason Peters isn't new to the offensive line, but he's new to right guard, and Andre Dillard is being basically handed the keys to the left tackle position.
Yeah, I agree with you there. When you look at the Eagles roster, look up and down the roster, Lane Johnson is arguably, one of the top 5 players that the team can least afford to lose, whether it be injury or COVID related. His role is of the utmost importance, and he brings stability to the offensive line. He's been a stalwart on the right side. He's going to be playing next to Jason Peters, and he can help him with that transition. Like you said, there's a lot of, you got Jason Kelsey, who's a little bit older now. You have that left side. Isaac Seumalo has played well in spurts, but he struggled at times. He hasn't been as consistent as you would like to see from that left guard spot. And then there's Andre Dillard. There's a lot of question marks around him, and there's a lot of pressure on him. Obviously, he projects to be the left tackle of the future, but you just don't know what you're going to get out of him this year. You need to get stronger. You need to get a little bit more physical, and he added some size. And now we need to see if he's able to put everything together from last season, all the things that he's learned, and kind of translate that onto the field. So, yeah, I agree with you. To get Lane Johnson back is huge for the Philadelphia Eagles.
You mentioned Dillard putting on the weight. Is he going to be a guy that you think is actually going to be able to, like, with this training camp situation, there's no preseason games. Is he going to get legitimately enough reps, in your opinion, that it's actually going to benefit him? Or is a guy like him still going to be behind the curve when week 1 comes around without the preseason games?
Yeah, I think he'll get as many reps as the Eagles determine that he can. I mean, he'll get all that he can handle. In other words, he's the left tackle right now, and the Eagles know they need to get him up to speed. So I think that you may see him not only get first team reps, you might see him out there a little bit longer with another line. And he was around last season, and we don't know the extent of how often, how frequent he was used in practice or anything like that. But this is his second season. He was a first round pick. I think he should be ready. There's no real reason why he shouldn't be ready to go when the NFL season goes live.
Who then do you think gets most negatively impacted then by the lack of the preseason games?
Rookies like a Jack Driscoll or Prince Tega Wanagwu, I would say, possibly, the back end guys like a Nate Herbig or a Luke Juriga, who I think could very well be competing for the same spot. Those guys aren't going to get a lot of the reps that they would ordinarily get given the abbreviated training camp and everything like that, where ordinarily they would have a chance to make the back end of the roster. And I think that's where you're going to see, a veteran player more so make the roster, when you look at depth roles and guys that are going to maybe needed to be counted on in the early stages or in the event of injury. So I think that a lot of the younger players, particularly like Jack Driscoll, who would ordinarily probably be a prominent depth player, are going to be most impacted.
He's Andrew DiCecco. Follow him on Twitter at @DiCecco NFL Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast every day at 4 o'clock on 97.3 ESPN on the Sports Bash. Andrew usually joins the show Tuesday and Friday. Of course, as all guests, he appeared on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Andrew, appreciate you coming back on this week, and good to have you back from your vacation.
Yeah, man, absolutely.